Dr. Uyilawa Waisui, an orthopedic surgeon in training, and I'm the president of Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors. On my entourage are Dr. Arome Adejo, who is my vice president one, then Dr. Isogun Jerry, my secretary general, Dr. Bill Kiss is my IPSG, and the incoming NAD president, Dr. Godia. Thank you very much, sir. Right, sir. I'm Dr. Uyilawa Waisui, the president of Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors, and we deemed it wise to want to first say a big thank you to the office of the Secretary of the Government of the Federation for his contributions towards the PTF chairman, the pandemic that has been happening in Nigeria, in facilitating things that have made the residency good for us. We say a big thank you. As a way of introduction, we are a new ESCO that resumed on the 26th of September 2020 when we had our elections, and we deemed it wise that in the three arms of the government, this office of the Secretary of Government of the Federation is very important, and it has been there, being a visionary, a father, a guardian, and a mentor to most of us, and we felt it would be wise for us to start on a proper note. And we know that when my predecessors have been with him for quite some time, and he has helped us in achieving some things, and for children that have learned from his father, we always come back to say thank you for all your help so far. But as I continue, I want to read out what we wish to achieve with this new ESCO. First, we wish to appreciate you for an immense contribution to the fight against COVID-19 as the chairman of the Presidential Task Force on the COVID-19. We also wish to bring to your attention the new National Officers Committee of our session as resolved to chart a new narrative by focusing more on one of the objectives, which is to express our views on all proposed regulations, policies, legislations affecting the training of medical and dental doctors in Nigeria, and to take up our corporate social responsibilities through collaborations with the government and non-governmental organizations. In view of the above, sir, we wish to solicit your support in actualizing the following, which will help us chart a new narrative for the health sector and prevent unnecessary strikes, always known by NAD. One, we want the approval of federal government through the Ministry of Health for NAD to be involved in process of policy making and strategic planning in the health sectors. This will enhance smooth implementation of the policies for better medical training and service delivery in the health sector. Two, we want the office of the Secretary to the government to also help us to review the establishment of the training, of resident training in Nigeria, as the rigorous sufferings associated with resident training, in addition to poor remunerations, is one of the major reasons for the brain drain that we are now experiencing in Nigeria. Payment of June, August, and September hazard inducement allowance as promised by the federal government. Upward and permanent review of the current hazard allowance of 5,000 naira as previously promised by the federal government. Payment of the skipping arrears, continuous payment of the medical resident training fund as approved by the federal government. And to fast track the process of actualizing of group life insurance for all health workers, especially during the critical period of COVID-19. Then to facilitate the housing scheme of all doctors through the National Housing Fund to curb the current brain drain. We believe that a personal call from the Minister of Works and Housing in this subject will go a long way in helping to achieve all this. But in summary, why we came is this, sir. We have learned that in the past few months of this pandemic, and with the era of the COVID-19, it has weighed down the health system. And it takes a responsive government to be able to make things work in Nigeria as a whole. And we must first give kudos to the Secretary to the government for being the head of the Presidential Task Force in trying to curb the COVID-19. And we know it has been a heavy burden on all doctors and the nation in general, both on the brains, both on our finances, based on our infrastructures, and based on our responsiveness to being a good governor. And we come to ask for just few things. That one, that the wrestling training has been on as an act that has been established by the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and it's an act that we need to review in terms of trying to curb the excessive brain drain of other countries coming to steal what Nigerians have invested in training doctors from the onset to being consultants, which we are all in training now. And if you check from what is happening generally now, most of our doctors are taken to Saudi Arabia, taken to United Kingdom, and we feel it's high time we have to come collaborate with the government in finding ways of curbing such outflow of doctors that we and Nigerians generally have labored to train for the past years. And part of what we think is that, one, that we need to be part of the strategic planning committees with the Federal Minister of Health in sitting down with them and planning on how we can help keep our doctors in Nigeria. And also, if you go to the world generally, you find out that most countries are trying to find ways to keep their doctors on ground. And examples of ways like this, if you go to the United Kingdom and in the United States, doctors tend not to pay school fees for their children. There are ways of helping them. Doctors are giving foods and palliatives to help them stay in the hospital and they are able to meet every other needs of the average Nigerian. This can also be employed in Nigeria. I'll give an example. I know there are policies in Nigeria that talks about the National Housing Fund, where every doctor can be able to get a house, or if it's just a land, to help them have that sense of belonging that the Nigerian government really cares about them and give them somewhere they can have a way on the leverage to pay from their contributory scheme and get this land, which I know the government can be able to do it. I'll give another example. For the past few months, over 20-something doctors have died from the infection of the COVID. And we know that apart from us just being doctors, we know you as parents also have one of us in your own homes. If not in your own homes, your brother's homes, your cousins, your nephews. And to be sad to see after all you have trained so many of us and you find out that we're infected with COVID and we are dying and we cannot even take care of our parents. And thirdly, you find out that most times when doctors run away from Nigeria, they go outside to do what? To help other nations. When our parents are still left in this environment, who's going to take care of them? So in ways of trying to help us stay, I think the government needs to look into the hazard allowance. If a hazard allowance for each doctor and each health worker is paid 5,000 naira, it would be sad that after all the exposures to Ebola, after the exposure to COVID, after all the exposure to yellow fever, as part of a way to encourage you is 5,000 naira hazard allowance. I think it's high time the government looks into this. And we're not just talking for our own selves, we're talking for the whole health system. So these are ways to try and improve and keep us to stay within the country and prevent the brain drain that is occurring now. I'll stop here, sir. Thank you very much. Dr. Namdi Morris, very Permanent Secretary, General Services Office, to now make his response. Dr. Berita.
Thank you. Yes. My colleague, the Permanent Secretary, Political and Economic Affairs Office, the President, and other members of the Nigerian Association of President Doctors, the directors here present, gentlemen of the press, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon, sir.
Before I make my remarks, I know why my colleague alarmed that the director of press was trying to create a problem for him because he just came out from one not too long ago where on a very short notice he was asked to represent the National Assembly and to speak on their behalf. So he became a politician immediately. So this is not the same situation here. So thank you so much. I want to, on behalf of our principal, our boss, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa, welcome you all this afternoon to his office. I want to also, on his behalf, apologize sincerely for his inability to be around at the moment. I hope he may still meet us before we round up. But he has asked me to convey his deep appreciation to your team for finding time, for finding him worthy to be visited this afternoon, to brief him and to keep him abreast with the activities of your association and, of course, the new emerging team from your association. You're welcome. The SGF, though maybe trying to rush down to see if he can still meet up with this association, and in the meeting, holds the association in a very high esteem. On a very short notice, he was invited by Mr. President, so he's right now at the villa. And I understand the anxiety and the concern he showed for missing this all-important visit. So we're not taking that for granted. The association, no doubt, is a very vibrant one, a very useful profession that has contributed immensely to the growth and welfare of our citizens, especially at critical moments like the one we have on hand, occasioned by the arrival, the visit of a very dangerous pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. And it is on record that your colleagues, your association, and all medical professionals have paid their dues. They have sacrificed some with their lives, their times, and their resources in trying to save this country from a total collapse. We thank you, we appreciate you for that. It's always like that, especially when there are emergencies of this nature. I remember sometime in 2014 or 15, when we also had the deadly Ebola virus. I remember how your colleagues, maybe some of you may be involved, battled spiritedly to save this country. And I think without missing words, you did marvelously well, and they are still doing. The role the medical practitioners have played in the current pandemic we have cannot be overemphasized and cannot be taken for granted. You have done great for this country. You have done very well. You have put in all you have to ensure that our lives are saved. So, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, and of course, Mr. President, appreciates the contributions your profession has made and is still making in the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. We appreciate you for appreciating us, for appreciating the Secretary to the Government of the Federation in his role as the chairman of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19. He wouldn't have done better without the cooperation and assistance he got from your profession, from your colleagues, from your association in trying to get things right. So we appreciate it's a collective victory. It's a collective fight. It's a collective display of concern by everybody in ensuring that the pandemic is contained. I want to also welcome your new executive that you have just mentioned, and do hope that in the course of their tenure, they will surpass what your own present executive has achieved in life. We pray so. But I must commend that you have done well. If it is within our powers to ask the present association, the executive to continue, we would have asked them to continue. But we believe that in picking the new executive, you must have, looked beyond the sentiments and beyond the personal relationships to pick the crop of officers that will lead the association in the next few years. Yes, in your display of your corporate social responsibility, we appreciate all that you have been doing, and will continue to expect more from you, because we have no other profession that is medically inclined that will save this country other than you and your association. So we will do our best at all times to encourage you. From your speech, you made me understand that the SGF has been, a pillar and a backbone in your success so far, and he will continue to display that going forward. You made quite a number of requests, which I was able to note down a few. First of them is the issue of being involved in policy making. Yes, the process of policy making is a strategic policy. It's a strategic issue. And I believe that as long as some of your colleagues are involved in leadership roles, I think they're also representing you. It's not everybody that must be involved at all times in policy making. And I believe that the Honorable Minister of Health and his Minister of State for Health and some other members of the PTF who are doctors, medical doctors, I believe should be members. And as such, they are representing you. In fact, when we gather for meetings, we allow them to speak more, to talk more on some of the medical policy issues, because we are not medical professionals, and anything that has to do with the health, we leave it to them to come up with such policy. So I believe that you are comfortably being represented, but if you still demand for more, we'll find a way to reach out to you in the future to see how we can engage you, constructively going forward. You raised the issue of review of the establishment policy on resident training, and I think we will note all these things, but I believe that it will do us a much favor if you can put some of these your requests on paper, so that the SGF will address it, formally, and then respond to the ones that we think we can, and then probably draw the attention of the relevant authorities to implement some of your demands. You mentioned the issue of payment of hazard allowance, the issue of upward review of hazard allowance. I think you said currently it is at 5,000 naira per month, is it? Okay, that would be addressed too, in line with the extant regulations in place. Where need be, such regulations may be revisited. Another issue you mentioned is the issue of fast-tracking the process of group life assurance scheme for medical doctors. I think some of these things have been identified by, in the past by some of your colleagues, but going forward, I think if it's contained in your decision, we'll look at it and see how far the government has gone in responding to such issues. But it's noted. As well as, that is the issue of the act establishing resident training. That one will have to be taken up with the relevant authorities, the National Assembly, and of course, maybe the Ministry of Justice, if need be. You also requested to be recognized, okay? All right, thank you. I will deliver it to my principal, whom I'm representing, because I am not competent enough to speak on this, but it will be forwarded to him, and at the appropriate time we will respond and get back to you. So you mentioned the issue of being part of strategic planning committees in the Ministry of Health. Thank God the Honorable Minister of Health and his, the Minister of Health, State for Health, are members of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19. We hold regular meetings with them from time to time. We had one yesterday, after which we had the national briefing. And the next meeting is coming up on Thursday next week. So before then, we would have analyzed your request and then take appropriate measures. The issue of basic incentives like housing schemes and other things to encourage your members has also been noted. Government will look into that and possibly see a way of directing your association to key into the very several government policies on housing, like the FISH program. There's also this national housing scheme, and of course, the National Housing Loans Board and the rest of them. Government will find a way to look into some of those demands and see where your request can comfortably be channeled. The doctors in Nigeria have actually done us proud, no doubt. The issue of brain drain of doctors, and not only doctors, but generally professionals in Nigeria, is a worrisome situation. Yeah, worrisome in the sense that government is doing virtually everything it has to do to create an enabling environment for them to work, But because most of them still feel that the pastures there are greener than the ones here in Nigeria, some of them you can't hold them back, especially the very young generation that is very conscious of moving from one clan to the other. But then, it's a good point you have raised. Government will look into some of those factors that encourage migration outside the country, especially by our professionals who are supposed to stay back and do their best. But for those of you who have not joined the race in jumping out of the territories of this country, we commend you so much. And we will do all that we have to do to encourage you to continue to stay here with us and take care of us. Because if everybody disappears, our aging parents, our aging relations, and of course, even our children, lost supper. All of us do not have the opportunities of going abroad for medical treatment. And if you look at it, what you ask yourself is, are they really doing better than us here in Nigeria? No. Look at the issue of the management of the COVID pandemic. I believe that Nigeria is doing greatly better than some of these Western countries, all being managed by our indigenous doctors and professionals. We did not import any medical professionals to come and help us manage our situation. And of course, that is where we have to give kudos, seriously, to Mr. President for his initiative in setting up the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19. And of course, by populating such task force with technocrats, with people of cool-headed, minded human beings, people that actually have the interest of this country at heart to drive the project. And you can see the successes we have recorded so far. Other countries are emulating. Today I was reading from one of the decent that is it that UK wants to introduce the post-travel COVID test process, just like we have in Nigeria. Nigeria is very, very blessed with people that can think and think aloud. The national coordinator of the PTF, Dr. Ali Usani, is a very wonderful, person that is so experienced and that has brought his wealth of experience to bear in the management of the pandemic. So I encourage you, I urge you to continue to remain steadfast to support this administration in the fight against this pandemic. And together we shall win. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Permanent Secretary, General Services Office, Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, who stood in for our boss Mustafa, on the occasion of the visit of Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors to his office today.